Are the children already asleep? A voice came on the phone, and I immediately recognized who it was. I swallowed, feeling a lump in my throat, because what could I say other than, yes? Yes, they are sleeping. Great, I'll be there in 30 minutes, his confident voice said. I'm really not sure about this, Mr. Robson, I said, realizing that I was in a very difficult situation. I needed 2 more weeks to figure it all out. You readily agreed when we discussed the prospects. You started it all, made the offer. Now listen to me, Susan. There are 2 weeks left until the end of the probationary period. I can cancel your appointment right now if that's what you want. His words sounded like a cold shower. It wasn't what I wanted, and it wasn't what my husband wanted. I must say, he had no idea at all what I proposed, and I never thought that I would have to do it. I looked at the phone, then at the wall, trying to decide what to do, what to say. Please, Mr. Robson, can we agree on something else, please? I begged, trying to find a way out. Come on, Susan, offer me an alternative, he almost growled. But I couldn't offer anything else, because there was no alternative, and he didn't even hint at it. It was my idea, and now I'm stuck. 30 minutes, be ready. Click. Mr. Robs. The phone went silent, leaving me talking to myself. He didn't know it, but I was almost ready. I took a bath, applied some aromatic body lotion, brushed my hair until it was shiny, and put on a short white rayon robe. I planned to curl up with a book for an hour or two before going to bed alone. My husband, to whom I had been married for 3 years, was on a business trip and wouldn't be back until Friday, and today was only Wednesday. My name is Susan Catherine Riggs, but my friends and family just call me Susan or Susie. I am 25 years old, and I have 2 small children. One is just 1 year old, and the other is 28 months old. Despite the fact that I have small children with a small age difference, I manage to maintain excellent physical shape. I actively do gymnastics at home and take good care of myself, which allows me to maintain my figure. Some people, including my husband, consider me a very sexy and beautiful woman. I have a really attractive appearance and a suitable personality that others like. I know how to keep my husband in good shape and in a good mood, which, unfortunately, sometimes leads to unpleasant situations in which I find myself. I knew Mr. Robson as we had crossed paths several times at various events. He gave the impression of a good and influential man, probably over 40 years old, and also quite handsome. He has complete control over the company he runs. My husband Tony applied for the vacant senior position, competing with 2 of his colleagues. He told me that if Mr. Robson spoke to me, I should listen carefully and respond to his words. Mr. Robson, according to Tony, does not like inconsiderate people. It so happened that at one of the events I found myself next to Mr. Robinson at the table. He asked me a lot of questions, including my hopes for the future, my husband's career prospects, and the like. He seemed interested in my answers, so I decided to use my feminine charms and show him all my attractiveness. I looked at him with languid eyes, slightly biting my trembling lower lip, and at that moment he became the only man in the world for me. I let him know how important he was to me and that I truly admired him. I did everything possible to make him feel my interest and admiration for him. He finally told me that he was considering my husband for the position he was seeking. It was at this moment that I made a mistake. In an effort to do everything possible to secure Tony the job, I made an offer that I shouldn't have. I said with special meaning that I would be very grateful if Tony received this position. I'll call if I need to, he replied, then walked away to another man. Tony came up to me and asked how our conversation went. The event came to an end, and we all went home. Tony and I spent the night together, and he was delighted. But my conversation with his boss and my inappropriate manners did not give me peace. What have I done? This is deeply embedded in my head, just like the image of Mr. Robson. 2 weeks later, Tony got the job he wanted. I haven't heard from Mr. Robinson, fortunately. Apparently, he dismissed my words as insignificant, and I gradually forgot about it as much as possible. And now here I am, alone, with my 2 little children asleep in their cribs, and Mr. Robson heading towards me. I have about 20 minutes to come up with a plan. Otherwise, I know what he expects. I made it clear that I would allow him to be with me, maybe not in direct words, but that's what I said. And if I don't keep my promise, Tony will be fired. I nervously drained my glass of wine, something I never do at home. Then the doorbell rang. I looked at my watch. 20 minutes had passed. He was here. I hesitantly walked over and opened the door. "Hi," he greeted me cheerfully, his face lit up with a wide smile. "Are we alone here?" He handed me a huge bouquet of luxurious roses. Their aroma filled the room. I was captivated by their beauty and grace. He walked past me, and I hurried to look outside to make sure no one was listening. There was no one. I carefully placed the flowers on the table in the hallway, enjoying their delicate fragrance. "You know how it works, don't you, Susan?" he asked softly. "Yes, Mr. Penn's Robson," I replied, and the next moment he kissed me tenderly. It was the first kiss I had received and given to another man since we got married a year ago. It was so unexpected that I didn't even immediately understand what was happening. "Mr. Robson, maybe there is another way," I asked hopefully. "No, Susan, you made an offer and I accepted it. It's a binding contract, that's how I work. If I have a contract, I honor it. It's a commitment to you and to me," he said firmly. The conversation ended there was no way out. I knew I would have to keep my side of the deal. After a while, one of the children began to stir, and I hastened to calm the crying baby. That night, I woke up feeling like I had been in a car accident, but deep inside, I felt amazing satisfaction and happiness. Mr. Percy Robson was not there. I looked around, trying to figure out where he could have gone. I ran out of the bedroom, went downstairs, checked the time. It was 4 o'clock in the morning. He left. I noticed that my wallet was not in its usual place on a stand in the hallway. I found it on the kitchen table, and it was open. Inside was a note that read, "I have arranged for a nanny, a qualified agency worker, to come at 9 a.m. on Friday. I want you at the address below by 10 a.m. I reread the note and found out his home address. I was overwhelmed with thoughts about his wife. Where would she be at this time? "Don't worry, you won't be there for more than an hour. But Susan," the note continued, "don't let me down." Then I realized how stiff and sick I was. Mr. Robson gave me something that my husband loves to show off to me. Good sex. I really enjoyed this feeling and even loved it, but at the same time I felt deep guilt for my emotions, especially since my husband, who had recently become a cuckold, would never know about it. The only thing that gave me some justification was that I was forced to do it. I was forced, so to speak, although I initiated it a little myself, naively believing that there was nothing wrong with it, and brought it to my door. I carefully analyzed my inner motives. I allowed it to happen. Mr. Barry Robson talked me into it, and I talked myself into it, thereby justifying my actions. He blackmailed me into doing this. Still, I liked it, being with Mr. Robinson. The words he spoke to me, forcing me to repeat them, all this violated my fidelity to my husband. With a sudden thought about the future, I expected to do just that, teach Tony without letting him know what was happening. I also hated myself for the next thought that came into my head. What does Mr. Robson have planned for me on Friday? Had I really decided to obey him? Yes, I think that was the case. The nanny arrived at 8:45 Friday morning, and my husband was due home that afternoon. I talked to him last night, and everything was fine with us. I was absolutely calm with myself, too. Amazing. The nanny was very nice, showed me all her paperwork, and proved within a few minutes that she knew what she was doing. So I left the house dressed modestly but sexy. "You look like you're going on a date, Mrs. Riggs," she smiled. I responded with a smile and thought to myself, "You don't even know half of what's going on, woman, not even half of it." When I arrived, I couldn't pinpoint my feelings. I felt guilty, dirty, like Mr. Kisser's Robson's toy. Approaching the door, I rang the bell. The door opened and Mrs. Robson, Mr. Tours Robson's 6-foot-tall Brazilian wife, stood on the threshold. I probably looked like a zombie, with my jaw slack and my eyes bulging. Before I could say anything, she spoke first. "Hi, Susan," she said. "I'm so glad you came. I've been preparing for this moment for a long time. Come in." She reached out, took my hand, and let me into the house. "You're probably wondering what's going on here," she continued. "Let me explain briefly. You're here because I wanted you to, and my husband was just conveying my intentions. After you showed him that you were open to him, you were hooked. I've long suspected that you were playing your game, and I knew that information about Tony's progress would give you away if I played it right, and I did." "I don't know what you're talking about, Mrs. Robson," I replied. "Let's dispense with the formalities. Okay, Susan," she said, "call me Venice." I looked at her, noting her beauty and vitality. She was a curvaceous woman and did not hide it. Her little black cocktail dress left nothing to the imagination, highlighting her confidence and sexiness. Long black hair and full lips complemented her appearance. "What do you want, Venice? It seems to me that there was some kind of misunderstanding here." "You're right, Susan," she said, approaching me. "Though the misunderstanding is yours, I'm afraid." "What do you mean? I think I better leave," I said. "Yes, Susan, you will leave, but not for another hour or so." I was completely confused. I came here with a certain knowledge that I'll be subjected to a grueling lovemaking session with my husband's boss. He ordered me to be here, and I came. But being greeted by his beautiful wife was more than I could have imagined. Another thing that became clear in retrospect is that I put myself in this position. I was forcibly seduced without protecting Mr. Robson, but it was the most exciting time I have ever experienced. Now I was cheating again, this time with a woman, Mr. Robson's wife, and again, I must admit, it was exciting again. I had never done this before, I had never been with a woman, and I often wondered what the attraction was. Now I learned this from my own experience. Obviously, I liked being controlled. This did not bode well for my future unless I could reform my husband. I was so beside myself that I didn't realize that I was already on my feet and being pushed out the door. I tried to say that I wanted to clean up, but all I heard was, "See you Monday morning, Susan," from him, and Venice saying, "See you Wednesday." I found myself in my car before I had fully come to my senses. I was annoyed, really angry. I was and remained a fool, a stupid idiot. I had to get out, do something, but what? Halfway home, I decided that. "Dennis," I said into the phone. "Hi," he replied. "Long time no hear." "Dennis, I'm in desperate trouble. I need help. Dennis, seriously." "Damn, Susan, what happened?" "Can you come to my house? I know it's a long way. Tony will be home by 4 this afternoon. I need you here at least an hour early. Dennis, please. Dennis, I need you." My brother must have felt the despair, even though I didn't tell him. "I'll be there in 2 to 5 hours, he said. I cried with gratitude. I got home and cleaned myself up before talking with the nanny. She said they called her and asked her to be here on Monday. I smiled but didn't say anything. I prepared for my brother's arrival, put my thoughts in order, and he arrived as promised. I told him everything, especially how stupid I was and how desperate I was. He agreed that I was stupid, but promised to work things out. My main concern was with Tony, his recognition, his actions, and the loss of the job he had always dreamed of. And I was afraid that this would be the end for us. My brother is a high-ranking police officer, and he took Mr. Robson's address and left, expecting a call from him or Mr. Robson. My brother has always been for me not only a caring guardian, but also a real protector. He was someone I could always rely on in difficult moments. Now that the situation has become critical, I am sure that he will be the one who can save me. About 40 minutes passed before the bell rang. Mr. Robson was on the other end of the line. There was a clear apology in his voice. He explained that there was a mistake, and he misunderstood the situation. It turned out that everything was mixed up and not at all what he thought. Mr. Robson assured me that Tony would never know about the mistakes he had made. He confidently stated that this information would remain between us and would not go beyond the scope of our conversation. Moreover, he mentioned that Tony was already thinking about possible further advancement and considering next steps, which means that his attention is focused on other, more important things. Mr. Robson also emphasized that neither himself nor his wife Venice will no longer bother me, with the exception of meetings at corporate events, which occur quite rarely. This was an important clarification, which added to my confidence in his words. He ended our conversation so quickly that I didn't even have time to respond to his words or ask any questions I had. I felt incredibly happy and incredibly relieved at the same time, although deep down there was a slight sadness that my affair with Mr. Biggs Robson had come to an end. I understood perfectly well that it would be better for everyone, but this did not cancel my mixed feelings. However, my plans remained unchanged. I was going to continue to train Tony. I took the phone and called Denny's to tell him about what happened and find out what he did in this situation. Dennis said he advised Mr. Goisy Robson that he had crossed all acceptable ethical boundaries and that an investigation into allegations of blackmail and coercion, regardless of their truth, would inevitably cause serious harm to both his company and himself. In addition, Dennis added that if Mr. Butcher Robson decided to challenge him to a serious conversation about this matter, he himself would be in big trouble. I returned to my life and everything fell into place. Tony got a promotion and our lives improved. However, I was never able to make Tony the person I wanted next to me. But it's not his fault, and I still love him, so it's not that big of a deal. Sometimes I dream about it, but I don't attach much importance to it. My third child is now 3 months old, and I'm still not sure who his father is, Tony or Mr. Robson. Most likely, I will never know the truth. But now, about a year later, I began to wonder if the man I met through Tony or elsewhere had the same power and charisma as Mr. Robson. Although I never wanted to go back to what happened between me and Mr. Bounds Robinson, I began to find pleasure in quietly checking out men. I enjoy this activity, and Tony benefits from it too. I find it fascinating and exciting. Even my housemate's son came under my attention, and I know he tested me a couple of times. He is a very nice man, and I see that very strength in him. Am I going down this path again? I think so, and I am aware of it. It's wrong, but it's so tempting. I also began to wonder if there would be another strong man who could capture me. I have to make sure that never happens, I hope. Meanwhile, I became more careful and circumspect in my actions. My thoughts often returned to the moment when I offered my help to Mr. Robson and to what followed. I have often wondered what would have happened if I had made a different choice. But despite all the doubts and worries, I realized that I had to move forward. My life had changed forever, and I needed to find ways to cope with these changes. I decided to devote more time to my family and children, to become a better wife for Tony and a better mother for our children. I began to actively participate in their lives, spend more time with them, organize family events, and just be there. This helped me take my mind off Mr. Robson and his wife, and gradually I began to feel inner peace. But even in these moments of calm, I could not completely forget what happened. This was the lesson I learned from my experience, to be more careful in my actions and decisions, not to give in to temptations and manipulations, and to always remember what is truly important in life. I realized that real strength and charisma do not lie in external attractiveness or power, but in the ability to be honest with yourself and others, and the ability to love and appreciate your family and loved ones. A few months passed, and I felt like I was able to find balance in my life. Tony continued to work and enjoyed his success, and I was proud that I was able to save our family. We became closer to each other, our relationship strengthened. I learned to appreciate the simple moments of happiness and joy that my family and children brought me. But despite this, I will always remember that period of my life when I found myself in a difficult and unpleasant situation. This experience taught me a lot, and I hope that I can use these lessons in the future to make my life better and happier. A few years passed, and life really got better. Tony has had a successful career, and our financial situation has improved significantly. We were able to move to a larger house, and our children grew up healthy and happy. We traveled, spent time together, and enjoyed every moment. I didn't stand still either. I started self-development, started taking courses on personal growth, and became interested in yoga and meditation. These activities helped me not only maintain physical fitness, but also find inner peace. I learned to control my emotions and make informed decisions, which has become an important part of my life. I would occasionally meet Mr. Robinson at corporate events. We exchanged pleasantries politely, but our conversations never went beyond formalities. Venice, his wife, was also present at these meetings. She always looked great, confident, and friendly. We didn't talk about the past, but I felt like she was keeping me under close surveillance. This reminder of what happened stayed with me, but it no longer caused the same fear and anxiety as before. Tony didn't suspect anything. Our relationship became more open and trusting. We discussed everything that was happening in our lives, shared thoughts and feelings. This helped us become closer and stronger. He was a wonderful husband and father, and I was proud that I was able to keep our family together. However, despite my outward well-being, I could not completely get rid of the shadow of the past. Sometimes, when I was alone, I was overcome with memories of what happened between me and Mr. Robinson. These moments made me think about what was truly important in my life and what I was willing to do to protect my happiness and that of my family. One day, at one of the corporate events, I ran into Venice. She came up to me with a smile and offered me a cup of coffee. I agreed, and we retired to a corner of the hall. "Susan, I'm glad you accepted my offer," she said as we sat down at the table. "I've been wanting to talk to you for a long time." "About what?" I asked, feeling a slight tension. "About the past," she answered bluntly. "I know it hasn't been easy for you, and I want you to know that I understand what you went through. I was cruel and unfair to you at that moment. I hope you were able to find peace in your life." Her words surprised me. I didn't expect such a revelation. "Venice, I don't know what to say," I admitted. "It was a difficult time for me, but I learned a lot and tried to move on with my life." "I can see that," she said with a slight smile. "You've changed, you've become stronger. I respect you for that." Our conversation continued for some time, and I felt that I was finally able to let go of the past. Venice also turned out to be different from what I imagined her to be. She was a woman with deep feelings and experiences, and perhaps she, too, learned lessons from this story. When I returned home, I felt like I was finally able to put the past behind me. I was ready to move on and focus on my family and future. My children were growing up, and I needed to be an example for them, showing them that strength and resilience can help overcome any difficulties. Now, looking back, I see that this difficult period became an important lesson for me. He taught me to appreciate what I have and not to give in to temptations that could ruin my happiness. I realized that real strength lies in the ability to forgive, both yourself and others, and in the pursuit of harmony and love in your life. The past no longer held me captive. I looked to the future with hope and confidence, knowing that I could overcome any difficulties and maintain my happiness and the happiness of my family. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one. Click to the